celebrating 100 years in mission. Present here are members of the Maryknoll Sisters congregation, the Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers, Maryknoll Lay Missioners, and Maryknoll affiliates. And together with them tonight are some friends from other countries, namely Ms. Adelina Martins, the second secretary to the Ambassador Constancio de Conciao Pinto de East Timor, and Luis Chang Boldrini, and he's from the Minister Counselor at the Embassy of Peru. So welcome, our guests. We also welcome our good friend Alexia Kelly. She's the director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome. And tonight we're thrilled to have Marie Dennis speak to us about the future of Maryknoll in the work for justice and sustainable peace. Marie is no stranger to anyone here in the room. She's played a leadership role in the faith-based circles throughout Washington for the better part of the last century. I mean, the 1900s. And we're fortunate that for over 20 years, she's represented Maryknoll so well here in Washington, D.C. She's written a number of books, which I'm sure you're familiar with, including St. Francis and the Foolishness of God, and Oscar Romero's reflections on his life and his writings. She's the co-president of Pax Christi International and the mother of 6 grown children and a grandmother of 7. Please join me in welcoming Marie Dennis.
Thank you, Kathy. And the reason that I was chosen to do this was because I could keep it really short. So it will be. But it really is very nice to just have a moment to say hello. There are very few places where I would rather be than back in this wide and really wonderful Maryknoll circle. So thank you all again for being here. As the Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers and Maryknoll Sisters celebrated their anniversaries, some reminiscing, as you can imagine, has been part of the exercise. Between that and my own preparations for leaving the Maryknoll Office for Global Concerns a few months ago, after 20+ years, I've had a really wonderful opportunity recently to reflect on Maryknoll's long engagement in the public arena. For almost 40 years, even before our sisters were murdered in El Salvador, in a wide variety of ways, Maryknoll has been committed to bringing the cross-cultural experiences of Maryknoll missioners, mostly from the margins in other countries, and the core values of our faith tradition that speak to these times into the policymaking processes of the U.S. government, the international financial institutions, the United Nations, and the corporate world. Whether pressing Coca-Cola to stop repression against unions in Guatemala, or JP Morgan and other banks to stop funding apartheid in South Africa, or the U.S. Congress to stop funding the Contra War in Nicaragua, at the heart of Maryknoll advocacy were the people and the communities where Maryknollers lived and worked. Their stories were the ground upon which we stood when we announced Jubilee or denounced NAFTA, worked in support of PEPFAR, or opposed yet another war in Iraq. It is important to remember that Maryknoll was involved in this work, and to some extent how, so we can learn from our mistakes perhaps, but especially why. It is important to remember that Maryknoll was engaged with efforts to end dictatorships and repression in the Philippines and South Korea, to promote a nuclear-free Pacific a nuclear weapons and nuclear energy-free world, to end trafficking in people and weapons, to promote the dignity and self-esteem of women and the rights of children, to accompany the people of Sudan and Zimbabwe, East Timor and Bolivia, Palestine and Chile, to educate and advocate for economic justice, to promote the rights and vision of indigenous peoples, and on and on and on. But also, and probably more importantly, it is important to remember why Maryknoll has been so involved. Because the why requires that we stay focused, that we stay the course. The fire burning in the belly of Maryknoll missioners that keeps you on Capitol Hill or in Foggy Bottom at the State Department, or going in and out of buildings on Pennsylvania Avenue from Treasury to the White House to the International Monetary Fund, or at the UN in New York, or on Wall Street, that fire was lit in Harare and San Salvador and Phnom Penh and El Paso Juarez. It is a fire fed by faith and by the great hunger we see for a different future than the one now being shaped in centers of power, including in Washington, D.C. We have been talking about that future all day. Let me just sketch a little bit of its outline for those of you who've joined us this evening. First, clearly, a new economy is urgently needed. One that is inclusive. In other words, designed to meet the basic needs of all people without exception. And one that fits within the real physical limits of Earth. That will require, as the Faith Economy Ecology Working Group, FEAT, says so clearly, it will require a shift in focus from the accumulation of material goods to holistic well-being, from excess to sufficiency, from exclusion to inclusion, from competition to cooperation, from pursuing privilege to serving the common good, from the preeminence of humanity to reverence for all life. The new economy will be measured not by GDP, evaluated not by unending growth, but by improved well-being, better quality of life for all people, for the whole Earth community. Second, and just as clearly, completely new perspectives on security, diversity, and sustainability have to take root in our political landscape. This too will require a huge shift away from massive military strength to ensure access to natural resources and markets. Instead, our security will be rested in a new, inclusive, and sustainable economy. Our understanding of the importance of diversity will emerge from our observation of the natural world, where an immense diversity of species and life forms undergirds essential sustainability. So a new economy and new perspectives on security, diversity, and sustainability point to a sea change in U.S. domestic and foreign policy. Budget priorities would shift. Relationships would change between the 1% and the 99%, and especially with those in marginalized and migrant communities where Maryknollers work, both here and overseas. We would, without question, protect the global commons: air, fresh water, oceans, biodiversity, our cultural heritage, accumulated knowledge, and the common good. In fact, language about the common good would be a part of our political lexicon again. And common would be an inclusive, generous, and welcoming word that expresses a commitment to global solidarity. We would stop preparing for war and carefully nurture peace, investing as we have never done in the time, the hard work, and the financial resources to make that real in extremely difficult circumstances. There are glimmers of hope, some small changes on the horizon, but they are not yet very bright. They are regularly threatened by greed and corruption and unthinking partisan ideology. More than a new paint job on an old battleship, we are waiting for, hoping for, working for conversion at the heart of the decision-making structures in this city. And we will be back over and over again with the stories of the people we love, and as often as possible with the people we love, to speak for themselves to Congress and the administration, to financial institutions and multilateral agencies, to the corporate world, and to give witness in public ways here to the better world we still and deeply believe is possible. Thank you.